Hello everyone, I am Citizen Spokesperson Westropp-Evans, and this is the daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokespersons Office. We're live on YouTube, Instagram and X, so please start submitting questions in the chat. Search for the Israeli Citizen Spokespersons Office on all major podcast platforms and for an audio-only version each and every day. And please like and subscribe, as it really helps us reach out to a wider audience of those who need to hear our message. Today is day 275 of the October 7 war, 9 months since Hamas declared war with its brutal massacre. Israel struck a UN school. Actually, Israel struck 3 UN schools since Thursday. And since October 7th, Israel has acted in and around multiple UN facilities, clinics, mosques, and even hospitals. And while this may cause a gut reaction of aversion, in truth, there is no question as to why. Yesterday, July 6th, Israel struck the Al-Jaouni UNRWA school in central Gaza. And they did so because Hamas was launching attacks from this UNRWA school. On July 4th, Israel struck 2 UNRWA schools, Al-Kahira school in Al-Fukan and Musa school in Dar Tufa, because Hamas terrorists were launching attacks from both of these UNRWA schools. On June 30th, Israel found dozens of Hamas weapons, grenades, and valuable intelligence in a UN school in Shajaya. The same day, they also found communications and observation gear, along with intelligence in a medical clinic being used by Hamas as a command center. On June 29th, a tunnel under the UNRWA school was found in Rafah. In June 24th, Hamas terrorists, including some who personally took part in the October 7th murder spree, were struck in northern Gaza schools in Shati and Dar Tufa. On June 7th, Israel struck Hamas murderers meeting in a shipping container on the grounds of the Asma UNRWA school in Shati, northern Gaza, and stopped an imminent attack. June 6th, Israel struck an UNRWA school in the Nuseirat in central Gaza, with at least 17 Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists, including some who personally took part in the October 7th murder spree, publicly identified as being killed in that strike. This is but a sample from the last month. The list of schools goes on and on. And Hamas doesn't just use UN schools. Going back to February, Hamas Intel HQ, including servers, was found. These servers were built underneath UNRWA's Gaza headquarters. There were even wires running from UNRWA's facility to the Hamas base. Hamas has been using this playbook for years. Why? Because it keeps working. Rockets were found in tunnels underneath UNRWA locations before October 7th, including 3 separate incidents of rockets discovered in July 2014. There were other discoveries reported on October 2017, April 2020, May 2021, and November 2022. Hamas are terrorists, exploiting the resources allocated to help civilians in the cruelest of ways. They proudly film themselves murdering civilians. They've lied for years about the numbers and identities of people who have been killed in Gaza as a result of Hamas's violent and heinous actions. And they certainly lie every single day about why schools, mosques, hospitals, and all manner of UN facilities are being struck. The Hamas terrorist organization systematically and strategically operates in what should be protected humanitarian sites. Why? Because it's a win-win for the Iran proxy. If they succeed in murdering Israelis, win. If international organizations and media accuse Israel of attacks on schools, win. Never mind that Hamas endangers Gazans and their hospitals, mosques, and schools. Those key pieces of infrastructure lose to the needs of Hamas. This has been the Hamas MO for years, and anyone repeating Hamas's propaganda only encourages to keep up this heinous practice of using these UN facilities, this civilian infrastructure, as part of their war against Israel and others. So let's take some questions from our audience watching live on various social media platforms, and please do continue to submit questions. We are reviewing them live as they come in.
Our first question comes from Leanne on Instagram Live. It's been 9 months since October 7th, and at least a dozen women are still held hostage by Hamas. What is Israel going to do if what we all fear comes true regarding the speculation of pregnancies among Israeli women who are held hostage?
Thank you, Leanne, for that question. And 9 months is certainly, for lack of a better term, an auspicious number for the amount of time that we've been waiting here. Time enough for a woman to bear a child, time enough for a child to be born, time enough for children to have lived the entire youth of their lives in the midst of this ongoing war. This is a terrible situation, and we, as always, plead for all the hostages to be brought back home now, for Hamas to release these hostages immediately from their care and holding. I mean, this situation is utterly intolerable, and this 9-month mark just serves as a practical and critical symbol for all those who believe that there should be a release of the hostages, to believe that people should be returned to their homes, to be returned to their families and their loved ones. To bear in mind where we stand right now, 9 months into this war, with so little thus far changed on the ground, and the need for so much change should be a reminder to all Israelis, all governments, all peoples around the world, for the need to bring the hostages home and to end the war as it stands. We pray and hope for these women that they aren't facing the sort of heinous atrocities that all of us can imagine, that I need not detail here in words, but we will have to see what happens as more people are hopefully brought home in the near future.
We're seeing lots of questions come in on social media about the hostage deal on the table. Can you give an update about what it entails and whether you think Israel will agree to the deal?
Look, the latest information that we have indicates that Hamas has moved somewhat on their key requirement that they had in the past, that Israel declare an end to the war in perpetuity before they come to the table here with Israel and actually make a ceasefire negotiation. But as it stands right now, so much of what we hear and what we understand is speculative and subject to change. It would be difficult to lay down a clear and concrete timeline for anything as it stands right now. So much is dependent on the sort of shuttle diplomacy that we've been seeing underway with multiple nations, Egypt, Jordan, and others being involved in trying to bring this dispute to an end. But ultimately, until we have concrete facts on the ground and concrete deals in front of us, it's really not possible to lay things out. But what we do know, and what we must maintain and make sure is absolutely clear, is that the hostages must all be brought home. They must be returned back to Israel. Unfortunately, that may mean alive or deceased at this point, but regardless, they must be brought back home as a precursor to any sort of deal. This is critical to Israel, to its people, and to being able to find any way to move forward in this terrible situation in the wake of the horrors of the October 7th massacre and what was faced by the people of Israel on that day.
Our next question comes from Shuli on Instagram Live. Over the past 9 months, there have been a list of crimes committed by the UN or UNRWA against Israel. How can other world nations continue to be members of the United Nations?
Well, surely, I mean, the question of the UN's actions is undoubtedly, one that should be held to account, and one that needs to be questioned deeply as to the manner in which the UN moves forward, both on the ground, whether that be we're talking about UNRWA and the schools, hospitals, mosques that have been used as coverage and protection for Hamas operators and terrorists, or whether we talk about the actions that occur on the floor of the UN General Assembly or other areas. These places do need to be held accountable, and these institutions need to be looked at closely to understand what is happening in this seemingly a continuous campaign and targeted campaign against Israel, which began immediately in the wake of the October 7th massacre, when Israel was still reeling and dealing with an infiltration of invaders inside their own borders. That being said, this is the forum that is available for world leaders at the moment, and individual world leaders need to stand up and advocate for a better UN, for better policies to come out from them, and individually, unilaterally as countries, to step forward and say that they do not stand by these actions and will not continue to support these actions, either financially, practically, logistically, however it may be, that they can put forward actions to help support the people of Israel and the actions of Israel in legitimately seeking to get their people returned home to them, who are now being held as hostages by the Hamas terror organization.
Speaking about nations around the world, we have a question coming from Benji on Instagram Live. There have been many elections taking place around nations around the world, including the recent victory by the British Labour Party in the United Kingdom. How does Israel feel about this victory, and is Israel worried about the British Labour Party?
Look, Keir Starmer, as we just said, was just elected Prime Minister. The Labour Party now leads UK politics, now leads the UK government, should I say, in the wake of that election. It's not for myself or for anyone in Israel to weigh in on the domestic politics of a particular nation decide whether a leader will or will not stand with or for Israel. But what we can say is that regardless of who is in charge in Britain, whether it be the Labour Party, whether it be the Conservative Party, no matter whom else it might be and what form of government is taken, Israel needs the support of the UK and so many other nations around the world. In fact, all liberal democracies certainly should be in support of their similar liberal democracy here in Israel to advocate for stringent policies that fight for the democratically elected governments to make sure that they are able to defend their people, to defend the sovereignty of their people, and to keep their citizens free from harm. Something that Israel is strongly advocating for, continues to fight for, is fighting for now in the border there with Gaza, fighting for in Gaza itself, and also fighting in the north against Iranian proxy Hezbollah, and on so many other fronts. Israel is a liberal democracy, I will say again, and it is critical that it is protected by its like-minded peers and sovereign nations around the world, regardless of who is particularly in power in the UK, US, across Europe, France, wherever we might be talking and otherwise. And I think this is a standard policy that should be reflected by all governments around the world.
Our next question comes from Enrique on YouTube Live. Can you give an update on the situation in the north of Israel since last week?
Enrique, thank you so much for your question. Look, fundamentally, we can talk about different situations that are occurring moment to moment, day to day, week to week. But as it stands right now, the situation in the north is thus: that Hezbollah still manages to maintain positions south of the Litani River in violation of the UN Security Council resolution. They do so continue to pose a threat to Israel and all the communities in the north of Israel who, as it still stands right now, with over 60,000 internally displaced people, Israel is unable to return its citizens back to their communities in the north of the country. The fact of the matter is, Enrique, and to all others listening, to all our viewers, it is important to note that this situation is untenable. It must be changed. And as we state repeatedly, Hezbollah must pull back or it will be pushed back by Israel. We must return to the UN Security Council resolutions, move back beyond the Litani River, create a peace along the northern border, which is something that Israel wants. We will not tolerate a militant Iranian proxy standing at our doorway. And frankly, this situation cannot go on as it is. What remains to be seen, as we see in the future, I guess time will tell.
Our last question for today is from Deborah on Instagram Live. Given the hostage deal that's on the table, how can Israel honestly negotiate in good faith with terrorists?
Deborah, this is a question that is faced every day by Israelis of all ilks. A question of how we can negotiate in good faith with those who, frankly, have given us nothing but bad faith from the word go. Terrorists, murderers, rapists, as we've stated many, many times here at the Israeli Citizen Spokespersons Office. It is a difficult challenge. It is an almost impossible challenge, but in reality, Israel can and must do everything that it can to bring the hostages home, and that is what they are doing. Whether that means dealing with bad faith actors all around, not giving any quarter where unnecessary, but understanding the realities and the pragmatic facts on the ground, which is what Israelis, again, of all ilks, are attempting to do every day when they come to face the reality that they live in. Unfortunately, this neighborhood here in the Middle East is not a particularly kind or generous one, and we're not always given the benefit of choosing who our neighbors are or choosing the manner in which we engage with these neighbors. So we must deal with the hand that we have been dealt, and Israel is attempting to do so in as much as possible. Whether it be good faith, whether it be bad faith, whether it be no faith at all, the fact of the matter is Israel just must bring those hostages home, and at the end of the day, the buck stops there. All right, well, that is all we have time for, so I'll remind everyone to please come and continue viewing at 3 p.m. Israel time each and every working day. Also 8 a.m. in the US East Coast. Please, Twitter, YouTube, X, TikTok, LinkedIn, please like and subscribe. It is so important that we get those viewers out there, we get our message out to as wide a community as possible. So if you can please go ahead and just hit those like and subscribe buttons, it will make such a huge difference to us. We really appreciate it so much. I've been Westropp-Evans. Thanks for